use bibframe or some vocabulary to express different types of content. So science library, here's a bit of their collection, or a music library, or a blah, 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 different type of institution. And I'm wondering how much of this LibHub is already done or explored.
We've done a fair amount as Zafira and whatnot, but one of the ideas that we had be curious to see if the group's interested is we have a whole set of transformation tools that use BibFrame Lite, and extended transformation rules. You could imagine a scenario where we host a data fest. Everybody comes, bring your hardest data, and we spend a couple days just mashing through what falls out, what's missing, turn it into a modeling exercise by discipline, and you walk away with working drafts of profiles for different subject areas like you were describing, Todd.
Just road test that idea.
Back here behind the pole.
Sorry, just 1 second. How many of you would either participate in that conversation or send someone from your institution, or know someone at your institution who would go to that? Okay, maybe a dozen? 15? Okay. I just want to have some sense of how much energy, and maybe not necessarily this is the best group to ask that question of, but just kind of get some sense of.
And a little bit of context on what we were talking about. When we've kicked this around with different groups, the idea is we could spend a lot of time debating which thing goes where and how to do the transition, or we can actually take the data, and the outcome is make sure that this BibFrame can represent me, can represent my data, and being able to put things out the other side that people can react to instead of it being theoretical. It's your actual data. That's the premise of it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I was just kind of how big of a problem is that, and how much of an opportunity is it? And it was one idea that had been discussed. So, great. Go ahead.
And I really want to piggyback on what he said was, this last year at ALA, I was at a pre-conference that was along those lines, and it was like programmers speak way up here. And those of us who, I hate to work with data day in, day out, we need something we can kind of wrap our arms around, sort of like, yes, I know computers and I know a little bit of programming and I know how data works, but I'm not a programmer. And the terms that were being used, I was about 20 minutes into this workshop and I was completely lost because it was for programmers. So I know that's a challenge when you're covering such a wide area. So that being said on that topic, there's a lot of work that's been done out there with this linked data in terms of ORCID and MusicBrainz and DBpedia and VIAP and all that. If there's a way we could harness some of that so that, when I look at the results in my discovery tool, I see the name showing up 5 times on the left-hand side as an author, it's the same person. Or as we would say in the cataloging world, there's no authority control there. If we could use that work that's already been done, instead of having that person's name, when you have that name, create the metadata with it that links it to ORCID, that links it to MusicBrainz for a music library, that links it to the appropriate linked data controlled vocabulary, so that we have more consistency, we have more internationalness, because those terms could be used internationally. And I think that would help improve our user experience, the accuracy of our data, the consistency of our data.
Okay.
Todd,
Yes.
just
Sorry.
to follow up on that same thing a little bit. So understanding what BibFrame can do is very new to me, but what I see is that it looks like it really does have the potential to expose library resources from open web searches. And so a couple of us in consortia who are here are excited about the idea of using that for electronic resources as well, and the representation of the access rights that's necessary in order to support using BibFrame to expose electronic resources that are differentially available for different institutions. That question is one that's now really buzzing in my mind because I think we're a lot of the way there, but the access rights part still, and communicating that in some way that can be determined and used in the BibFrame environment it would be a key next step. So that's one thing I think we have to think about. I don't know if there's a role for NISO there or not, but so kind of expanding BibFrame to electronic resources given the differential landscape of access and how that access might be appropriately communicated effectively so that it could be used by the major web search tools.
And to follow up on that, holdings availability, right now in all the different ILS systems, it's all proprietary, or a lot of it's proprietary information, and getting kind of standards for that would be very interesting.
Let's see. Some other. Oops. Hard to do with one hand. The issue of, well, I guess we covered some usability, user interface issues. From the vendors in the room, specifically, not to call you out, what kind of issues do you have that would make your lives easier in providing the services that you provide? Let's see.
I got Steve here.
Wait, Scott?
Well, some of them I think are being solved. You know, still metadata is a huge problem for us. You know, just making sure that it's consistent. You know, edition to edition, vendor to vendor. The thing that's obviously a big problem for patrons and librarians is linking, broken links. And having those direct links from publishers is actually really critical. Open URL stuff is just too fragile. So those are the two things that come to mind.
I would agree on the metadata. One of the things that we discussed earlier was, for example, resource type definition, being clearer on, you know, what is an article, what's a review article, what is, you know, different resource types. Because I think a lot of publishers defining this differently. It's sometimes very hard to, you know, convert this into something useful. So that was one of the things that I think could be very useful. In terms of linked data, I think we need more use cases. We need more, like, what do you actually want to achieve with linked data? What do you want the user to see? That sort of thing. I would find that very useful to get this, you know, from different sides. Yeah.
So I have a very long list, but I'll share only a couple of things. I think confirming what Steve said, definitely the movement to direct linking is something that, we have made available. We would like to see it move along more quickly. So I think, addressing some of that pain point with linking is definitely top of the list. The other thing is, I think we all talked about user interface issues and just the ability, I think there's some balance between allowing some customization and having that being too burdensome and not, I think our table talked about maybe not even having some of the research and expertise to want to manage that. But I do think that there should be some recognition of, how to serve the users better and the range of users and the range of content better within, these very long lists of results and very broad data, discovery layers that we built. So I think the user interface issues and linking are probably top of our list.
Someone asked earlier about how many projects NISO could do at the same time. I'm glad that Nettie has left.
But it's on the live stream.
Yeah, it's being recorded. She'll get me back. Okay, well, I think 3 pages of ideas, plus everything that we've garnered from the various roundtables is sufficient, I think. What we may do is consolidate that list, clean it up, and maybe provide some context to those brief couple word snippets, and maybe create a survey and send it out to you all so that you can react and respond and on a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 3, this is a 6, this is absolutely a 10, in order so that we can maybe provide some context to the Discovery to Delivery Topic Committee in establishing its priorities moving forward. Because I think, in addition to you all of the people in the live stream, getting some priority on a 30-item list is going to be important. Realistically, we can't do everything without additional resources, and I think that might be 7 figures to do all of those things. We need to be judicious in the things we move forward with. So some context, some additional feedback from you all will be valuable in that. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their ideas at this stage. See. Peter, are you? Do we have,
We're scheduled for a break.
We scheduled for a break?
We are.
Okay.
At 3, but we can do it a little early.
No, I was thinking of, actually it's scheduled for 2:45.
Oh, it is? Oh, never mind.
Look at that. Someone did some forethought in putting this agenda together, and we got it going. Okay, excellent. So what we'll do now is we'll take a 15-minute break. Some treats again in the galley. We'll reconvene with a closing at 3 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. All right. We'll start getting people back to their seats. All right. We are in the home stretch. Are you using the screen? Yes. Woohoo. I'll get the Peter slides up. So we wanted to tie everything together here. And we thought of no better person to tie these strands together than Peter Murray. Peter is a library technologist, and he's a blogger at the disruptive library technology Jester. He's also newly, woohoo, ta-da. He's also the newly appointed project manager at the Cherry Hill Company, which is an IT services company that provides tech services for the nonprofit sector. He is also, thankfully, co-chair of the Discovery to Delivery Topic Committee. So we've asked Peter here to provide a kind of summary of what we've talked about for the last 2 days, kind of wrap it all up and put it in a nice bow on it, and eventually lead the committee that will then take a lot of these ideas and decide what we're going to do with them. So with that, Peter.
Very good. Thank you. Greg German gave me this hat, and it's been sitting in my closet for nearly 10 years, and I thought today at this forum was a good time for it to make its professional debut. You know, a jester's role in the medieval courts was to speak truth to power, and I don't know if this hat will so empower me today. But I do know that it had the added bonus of embarrassing my 14-year-old daughter on Sunday as I wore it to the airport. And secondly, with the gracious blessing of the NISO Educational Committee, with whom bestowed this wonderful event on us, please be aware that as I, the jester, will not prognosticate long upon this stage for the next hour, but instead will enlist you here in the audience and you in the windows of the ether to join this conversation. Not a day of Shakespearean training, could you tell?
Instead, you know what, as Todd said, I wanted to provoke a few thoughts and maybe prick a few conceptions, preconceived notions about discovery layers, and tie it all up with some of the things that you have said in the course of these past 2 days, and things that have been said on Twitter that have not yet been heard here in this room. And along the way, if I make you laugh, that's just an added bonus. To do this, I want to start our exploration with of this through the 5 W's of journalism: who, what, where, when, and why. The who, the what, the when, the where, the why of discovery services. And since this is the end of the meeting, we're going to, project ourselves out 5 years from now. What is a discovery layer going to look like 5 years from now? And to do that, I'm going to use the Amazon Echo as my foil. Has anybody heard of the Amazon Echo? A few people? Okay, so this is good. This will be new to you. Let's just see what Amazon wants us to think about discovery. AV in the back, if you could roll the video, the first 1 minute and 25 seconds. Oh, this won't be as good without the sound. Oh, okay.
Drop a mic.
What's that? I don't have it here.
Can we just drop the mic next to the audio out?
Whoops, that one forward a slide. There we go.
Can we restart that? All right. Having trouble actually seeing this video up on the screen, though. For some reason, it's not playing on the screen back here.
Okay, I'm bringing it up here. Can you at least just play the video? I can play the audio.
can't get the audio. We can't get the video to play for some reason.
I sprung this on the AV guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah, for some reason it's not.
Yeah, if you search YouTube for introducing Amazon Echo,
I think we've crashed Internet Explorer.
I can hear the little girl's voice.
So who's?
I can hear the little girl's voice over there, too.
So you got it working?
I didn't know what it was.
Yay.
What is it?
You'll see.
Is it for me?
It's for everyone. It's called Amazon Echo.
How's it going?
I'm just finishing up right now.
Is it on?
Oh, it's always on.
Can it hear me right now?
Nope. It only hears you when you use the wake word we chose. Alexa.
Well, what does it do?
Alexa, what do you do?
I can play music, answer questions, get the news and weather, create to-do lists, and much more.
Awesome. Alexa, play rock music.
Rock music.
Alexa, stop.
Wait, I want to try. Alexa, what time is it?
The time is 3:27.
You actually don't have to yell at it, okay? It uses far-field technology so it can hear you from anywhere in the room.
So it can just hear you anywhere?
Yes. Well, everyone can hear you anyway.
Oh, is that where we're going to put it?
I was thinking of putting it there, but it works anywhere.
Echo is pretty neat because it knows all sorts of things. All you have to do is ask.
Alexa, how tall is Mount Everest?
Mount Everest's height is 29,029 feet, 8,848 meters.
How can it know so much? It's so small.
It updates using the cloud. That's also how it gets its answers.
Just read that off the box, huh?
Okay.
Dad
Thanks.
really likes the Echo just plugs.
It goes on for another 2 minutes, and that's fine. And like I said, if you haven't seen this yet, it's well worth watching. Also, there's a not safe for work parody version of this. If you search for Amazon Echo early beta version, it's quite humorous as well. But you know, did you see the? I hope I clued you into what to look for there. You know, the father walks in and he just asks into midair, Alexa, how tall is Mount Everest? And you know, that of course is one form of discovery. I don't know if that's the form of discovery that we're traditionally thinking about, asking these very brief questions and getting very factual answers back. But I think it's useful to compare and contrast what Amazon Echo is doing and its ilk, Siri and Cortana and Google Now and all the rest of that, with the discovery services that we want to provide. How are we different and how are we the same? And we're going to do that with those 5 questions: who, what, where, when, and why. Whenever you get a chance, if you can put my slides back up, I won't need them again for about another 5 minutes. Oh. Advance it 1. It may be because the video is in the way. Let's start with who. Now really, this is a risk because it's late in the afternoon. I want you to close your eyes. Out there on the glowing screens, you close your eyes too. Now I want you to imagine the most challenging person to support. You know, now for the reference librarians in the room and you know those that do user experience facilitation, this probably isn't going to be very hard. For others, perhaps you work in tech support and you can think of someone that you had to help with a computer problem. Or just think of someone who walked up to you in the hardware store and asked you what screws you wanted they should buy. Or someone in the grocery store asking you how to know when a melon is ripe. Got that person in mind? Okay, keep your eyes closed and your mind on the picture of that person. Do they know how to navigate the web, operate a mouse, understand the user interface clues that are now ingrained in your experience? Do they have a speech, mobility, or visual impairment? Do they have the life experience to even form the question that they are asking? Or are they a child or a budding scholar in an unfamiliar research area? Is that the person that you had in mind? You can open your eyes now. Those, I would argue, are the kinds of people that we're looking to serve with our discovery layers. It's not just the people in this room. There's a whole who-ness that's much broader that our discovery services need to take into account. A wide range of skills and abilities and knowledge. The Amazon Echo probably has some notion, some built-in discrimination filter so that it knows when the child is asking a question and when the adult is asking a question, and it might be tailoring the responses based on that discrimination. Do our discovery layers have that kind of context of the person asking the question? Is there any way for us to get that context? Speaking of context, I might just have to signal you for the next slide. We're up to what? Speaking of context, in that Amazon Echo ad, it was a simple factual question that was met with a simple factual answer. Is this what we really envision our discovery layers to be? Personally, as much as I love libraries, I love working in libraries, I love working for libraries, the discovery layer is not the first, second, or third place I'm going to go to ask the question of how high Mount Everest is. No, instead, the what of our discovery service, I think, should be rooted deeply in the tradition of the reference interview. That interaction between trained professional and questioner that clarifies the intent of the question and the form of the reply that's needed. A factual answer or a short instruction on how to find the answer. Whether it's an encyclopedia article is enough, or whether an in-depth review article is what's being sought. Whether a single reputable source is all that's required, or we're doing a comprehensive search for all information on a topic. The art of the reference interview carefully guides the user through a whole maze of possibilities. And the user might not even be aware that they're being guided through all of those possibilities. They just know that they've landed on the place that they need to be when their question is answered. Do our discovery layers account for all that complexity that leads the user to the end goal? Are our discovery layers or simply attempting to mimic the Amazon Echo or the Google single search box to present users with just one small facet of answering a question that with the single one-size-fits-all answer? Where? If we go back to the Amazon Echo, it was that innocuous little black cylinder in various rooms of our houses. Really kind of the scary part is, in that first 90 seconds, we saw it in the living room. Later on in the video, it makes its way into the bedroom. And in the parody video, well, never mind. And, you know, do we envision black cylinders for our discovery service in all the places that the users are? You know, a black, I'm not going to pick on vendors because that wouldn't be fair, but you know, a black discovery service cube in an office, on the reference desk, in the dorm room, in the home of our users, where we're asking these questions. Of course, let's not just stop it at, you know, Amazon Echo and its black cylinder. We also have Apple Siri on a watch. We have Google Now on a phone. For me, where is clearly not a place where we need to keep up with the Joneses. I would argue that we don't need to be on a watch. We need our discovery service to be responsive to mobile interfaces, but that's probably not where the user is going to be conducting their comprehensive research. We shouldn't lose sight of where the users are going to do their research. They're going to want to do it on tablets. They're going to want to do it on desktop devices. You know, somewhere where they're asking those in-depth questions, where they're exploring their possibilities, where hopefully the discovery layer is leading them through that reference interview to find the information that they're seeking. That's just quite frankly not something I see happening on a watch. You know, of course, this is an opinion statement. I think we need anthropological testing and user experience testing to know this, but everything I've read so far says our users are not doing in-depth discovery on those kinds of devices. But there's another facet of where. There's a facet of within our own community, we should be looking for the discovery layer to be ubiquitously available where the user is doing their research. We heard yesterday with Gail Cengage about how they're integrating their discovery service in with the learning management system. That's one place where that kind of integration is happening. Can we also integrate our discovery layers into the laboratories, into the performance spaces, into all of those areas where a user could have a question that they're seeking the answer to? And I think that component of where is more important than the mobility of a watch or on a phone. And of course, when. When do undergraduates do their research? Of course, it's 10 p.m. on, I heard a chuckle, it's 10 p.m. on Sunday night. In fact, you know, I wonder if one of the contextual clues that our discovery services could have could be time of day, could be day of the week, could be week of the year. And, you know, to get a sense of, well, you know, this user is really just looking for, or this user may just be looking for the 3 good articles that they need to write their paper. Maybe I'll pop up a question if I sense this is happening. Hey, are you just looking for the 3 best things, or are you conducting an in-depth research project? You know, bring that part of the reference interview in based on those signals. You know, the Google Web search strategies, the engineers would call this a signal. You know, the time of day, day of week, day of the month is a signal. And Google tells us that they use more than 200 signals whenever we make a search. You know, our devices, our locations, what we've asked for in the past, what's nearby us, to tailor the search results to our specific needs. And in that way, you know, the reference interview's artful posing of questions starts to sound a little bit like ferreting out those signals that a search engine uses to get results relevant to us. There's one special signal, though, that I think requires very special handling. Why is the patron asking this question? What more can I infer from the series of questions that he or she has asked the Discovery Service over the past month? You know what? For me, I don't want to know. In fact, I'm actively going to take steps to be sure I don't know. This here, I argue, is what distinguishes us from Amazon Echo, from Siri, from Cortana, from Google Now, and the rest of the emerging personal assistants. If I were to ask my Discovery Service the height of Mount Everest, and then ask, the distance between Baltimore and Mount Everest, and then ask how warm Mount Everest is in August, I don't want to be followed around the web with advertisements for books on mountains or for tourist packages to visit Nepal. That's just not the kind of service that we are. The third principle of the American Library Association Code of Ethics says we protect each library user's right to privacy, confidentiality, with respect to information sought or received or resources consulted, borrowed, acquired, or transmitted. As a librarian, there are few things that make me more anxious than to show up being quoted in a news article like this. I know this is controversial. In a world that is being given customization, complete contextual awareness, near present capabilities for meeting its information needs, it seems important that the library profession should chase after those capabilities. I just don't know. There's a large working group within NISO right now that is trying to put meaning to that code of ethics statement in a way that works in our highly distributed, highly networked service models. Records of patron activities cross across many organizations, contractual arrangements, and network layers. I too have been amazed by the capabilities of these systems that are arguably not bounded by our professional ethics. I just don't think libraries should go there. But, I'm just a guy with a funny hat on his head, just taking some time to learn to juggle. Maybe our 5-year-old selves will look back on this and wonder why it was so hard for us to determine what we wanted our discovery layers to be. Maybe 5 years from now, we'll be wondering why we put so much fuss into something that was simply a flash in the pan. Maybe 5 years from now, Google's On will deliver to us the perfect information device, like the Echo is a prototype that will answer our questions. Or maybe we will just have found in a gathering in Baltimore in 2015 that the ideas that were thought of here and were then reflected out into the world made a real difference in our discovery layers and our services to our patrons. Yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. Now comes the audience participation part. If you don't mind, I'm going to take that off for now because that was getting warm and I did not expect that. Over the past 2 days, I've been taking notes on things that have been said here and things that have been said on Twitter. And when Todd asked me, could you come speak and wrap all of this up in a nice bow, I thought, yeah, that sounds like fun. and then, yeah, it scared the crap out of me. Because what do you get to prepare with other than, trying to be knowledgeable on the subject? Fortunately, this has been a wonderful meeting. I think everyone here, not only here in Baltimore, but also watching the live stream and contributing your thoughts on Twitter, we've come up with some great ideas. So what I've done is I've written down some ideas that have crossed the past 2 days, that have crossed time and space, I guess you could say, and I've tried to put them together in a way that we could maybe look at them a little differently. I don't have names attached to any of these, so you're either welcome to ignore the fact that I've picked out your comment, or you can cheer and say that you want to expand on that comment. Some of these are things that we've talked about that didn't make it onto the flip charts, and so that I think would be a wonderful thing to do. Let's start with an easy one. This came in from Twitter. How many folks participating in NISO forum are here on behalf of a consortia or are interested in discovery at the consortia level? Consortia? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and a half. Right there, I see your half. About 8. So about 8 people in the room, to whoever asked that question on Twitter, were interested in that. Here is a group of questions or comments about embedded librarianship. One was, ideally, you shouldn't have to educate your user, a la Google, but if you could get better results within 5 minutes of learning, what would you do? Embedded librarianship in places like Google Scholar and Mendeley, it's not about competing with those services. Embedded librarianship, I think this is promoting embedded librarianship in places like Google Scholar and Mendeley. It's not about competing with those services. We should spend effort on being available where users are when they realize they want more info. And we've got some concerns about how usable, insert name of product here, is for our students. We need to make stuff discoverable where people are actually searching. And it was reflecting on mobile and single sign-on and things like that. So this notion about embedded librarianship, embedding the discovery layers, embedding our library services in other places. Does anybody recognize their thoughts here and want to talk about them a little bit more? Or does this spark any discussion on your part? No? Okay.
None of those were my thoughts, but I like them. And I especially like the idea of embedding in Google or Mendeley or resources that really are not under our control. I don't even know if that's possible, but I feel very much that we should not be in competition with these sources. We should be working with them for the benefit of our users.
So let's dream out 5 years. Let's not be so concerned about the how, but 5 years from now, we want to be in those places. Other thoughts? Are there other places that we should be? Right
here. Again, with medical libraries, there's a slight difference. One of the issues we're trying to figure out is where do library resources turn up in the electronic health record. So, and what role does the library play in deciding or suggesting, not deciding, but suggesting what goes in there. It's a question that a lot of medical libraries are looking at right now.
And I imagine that brings a whole new complexity of privacy to the searches and how resources are integrated into the electronic health record.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, please.
I did recognize one of those thoughts as one that I tweeted, and my thinking is that as people go around through their day and they recognize they have information needs, it's very easy for them to turn to their browsers or their phones, and they have a search tool right there, and it's most likely going to be Google or something like that. And we're not right there unless they go through a lot of steps to get to the library and start. So one of the ways I think we could improve our use and our service to the users is by having tools that could be deployed in the little search area at the top of my browser that automatically will search Wikipedia or Google. Why isn't there one that searches the library in a way that they can enter a search there and it does some sort of intelligent checking to see are they from a recognized IP, and go and check OCLC's registry to see if this is associated with the library. We don't seem to be collaborating in ways to make this sort of thing at all a possibility. And I think we need to start thinking along those lines.
So in 5 years, you envision a way that a user, rather than putting it into that search window that goes to Google, that starts an interaction with the library's discovery layer and starts that process of finding out what the user needs.
Right, but it needs to be starting an interaction with the library as a concept without the user needing to know that they're going to a particular library and having set up in advance all these things. We need to make it easier for users to connect to the library without them having to have pre-planned all of it.
Without having set up what their library is. Yes.
Yeah, so I recognize the comments. I think came originally perhaps from some of the lists of remarks that came out of users that I put up on the screen that you then tweeted. And I think the thinking behind that is thinking very hard about not only where current users are or congregate or what they're looking at, but also future users. So thinking very hard about what are the resources that young people are using, and if they're gathering on Instagram rather than Facebook, then let's go there and let's put the links in there. Let's get something inspiring and something that's attractive in Instagram, something that people want to actually read, not necessarily scholarly resources, but just links to libraries. So start getting people used to arriving in a library environment. There's other things as well. There's like the plugin for DPLA that works so well and so nicely within Wikipedia. You can just have it at the top, and it says you do a search, and you can say, "Oh, look, I can search the DPLA for that as well." And so that loads very easily, and it's really nice to use. So it's just making sure, as I think the previous person said, these things are easy and are right in the way, in the kind of eyesight of these up and coming users.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Other thoughts? This one's for Todd. Random musing. I like that NISO is pronounced nice-o.
Or NISO, depending on...
I've heard that too. No. Okay, I'm gonna press this one on you, because obviously, if you didn't gather, privacy is a bit of a hot button with me. But these were, again, not mine. Can we construct privacy when desired? Some of us would like to do so for specific topics. So I imagine if a discovery service Is there a do not track me button for this particular search? Library patron privacy is important, but they also expect functionality from us that depends on using their data. That is hard to argue with. Privacy may become more of an issue as fringe cultures and sexual minorities rise. Thoughts about privacy in discovery layers?
I would think that the do not track could be really challenging in the next 5 years because it's got to go all the way through the information system.
Ah.
So it's not just the discovery system that's do not track. If I land on this full text, do not track. If I follow this other link. So how do you get it down through the chain?
That's intriguing. That's intriguing. So yeah, do we start? Yeah. Her comment was the browsers have a do not track setting on them. It's a setting that is transmitted with every web request. Can we use that as a signal that, hey, this session that I am engaging with in this discovery layer and with all of its downstream components, there's a do not track me associated with that. We're kind of overloading the sense of do not track. It was originally intended for, I believe, for advertisers. But yeah, is that a possibility to implement something like that?
And hopefully would be less ignored than the advertising community ignores it.
And there's also that the advertising community pretty much ignores the do not track button. I can't even read my own writing. Tailored search results are a double-edged sword. You get better results, but eventually we will all be in our own echo chambers. Expanding the scope of discovery beyond country borders is an important part of discovery. I think we heard that one this morning. Walking through stacks is great serendipitous browsing, but remember that there has always been books that aren't in the open stacks. Cross-pollination of ideas is an important part of discovery. How do we make our systems learn what users want while retaining serendipity? 5 years from now, again, just picking out that 5-year mark. What is the balance between serendipity and finding the right precise answer that the user wants? If you follow some of the happenings with Apple and its release of Apple Music this year, there is now a slider that you can say for this channel, make this really precise. I want things like this artist. Or you can slide it a little bit and say, I'm interested in things that may not be quite so similar to this artist. But Apple is still getting a lot of pushback and a lot of flack because there are things popping up in people's playlists that they don't want. Do we risk alienating our users if we have that serendipity? Is it part of our charge to encourage it? What's our role there? Oh, okay. One, two. Yes.
The serendipity that came from walking through the stacks was always to some degree
the choice, took the initiative of the person walking through the stacks. You could look something up in a card catalog or a computerized catalog, go to the stacks, find exactly what the book was. Maybe you could look one to the left, one to the right, a little bit of serendipity, and then go back and read the book that you found. Or you could sort of take a step back and look in a wider way. It always took some initiative on the part of the library patron to want a little bit of that serendipity. And I think so there's maybe a limit to sort of pushing that to them via some sort of discovery layer. Maybe there's a distinction between pushing that and offering it. To
Better? Oh.
Yes.
So what if you, building on what, is it Peter? John. John was saying, something, like related or find more like this, what about, I don't know how you'd brand it, but something that just basically says, shares one citation, build something on, something that cited this article, but the rest of the citations don't match, so you're kind of venturing off into new ground, but there's something similar, some kind of...
Some visual clue.
Some visual clue that, if you want something like this, but in a different direction, click here, and we'll show you what we got.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
A lot of this sounds like we're talking about machine readable and algorithms and ways of tying people together based on, or tying people to their search results based on, or recommendations based on their history and how we read the terms they use when they're searching. But when you brought up that example of Apple Music, it occurred to me that there's some intangibility that we're never going to get away from simply because two different people can qualify something differently. They can label it differently. They can call it something. One can call an article or a song or a piece of art something in a genre or a style that someone else completely disagrees with, which can of course open up dialogue as to the meanings of those terms and that art and that music, but I don't know if that necessarily answers the question for the person searching or trying to create a Pandora radio station or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell if we'll ever get away from that human aspect of it, even with all the algorithms you can possibly create.
Mm.
Just an observation. But.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to broaden our thinking about what serendipitous discovery means, because when we ground it in metaphors like browsing through the stacks, we have to remember browsing through the stacks actually eliminated a whole lot of materials for the user. Depending on how the library was organized, they might not get serials. They probably wouldn't get maps. They probably almost never would get archival resources or resources that were shelved off-site, large format items, all of these things. So I would hope we can actually do a lot better going forward. And part of that is expanding beyond the notion of libraries as holders of monographs and libraries as holders of serials. And we really need to start thinking more broadly about what sorts of things we actually need to provide access to.
I think that's a great observation. And until you said monographs, I was going to suggest, of course, that dealing in the physical universe, when we put things in call number order, that physical item exists in one physical place and may not, it doesn't exist in any other place where it might be related. But then you said we should, include things other than monographs, and you kind of blew me out of the water. But that's fine. So I think of that also as part of the maybe I just have this glorified vision of the reference interview because I'm not a reference librarian. I only did my time on the desk in library school. But that seems like part of, again, that reference interview. What is it that you're looking for? How broad do you want your material types to be? How broad do you want your perspective on these terms to be? And again, with machines, is there a way that we can make that part of our systems?
One of the things that occurs to me when talking about the book stacks as a analogy for serendipity is that there was a lot of work that went into organizing those books in the first place. So it may not be stuff that the user expected to discover, but it was kind of stuff we librarians expected the users to discover when they were seeking that topical information. Another thing that occurs to me about serendipity is it implies that the person wasn't really looking for that bit of information at that time. And when we're thinking of discovery systems, most of the time we are envisioning someone going to our system and doing the search, and they really are looking for that information at that time. It's just a matter of how we have decided to organize it and present it to them. But I wonder if we could turn that on its head in some context. For instance, if I have a class and they have a learning management system page, it would be possible for us to set up alert systems that would feed into that class. And it would not be personalization, but it would definitely be customization for that class. And it would be serendipitous for the users in that context because they'd log into their class and they would see this feed of articles that relates to the topics they're learning about then. So there may be ways that we could use the systems without much tweaking, without really technological changes, to create some serendipity for our users.
Nice.
One of the things about serendipity is that we don't want to confuse it with randomness. You know, the idea that we in library school was aboutness. I'm kind of sort of in the area that I want to be at. You know, the item I want is right there. As I move away from there, the items become less relevant to what I'm looking for. And then as I move further away, I'm not completely away from what I want, but I'm still kind of sort of close in that neighborhood. So the idea of serendipity becomes a little bit more relevant because I'm kind of close to where I want to be, but not exactly. And, you know, the idea that information moves from this point to this point, that there is some logical progression, you know, as Dewey might do it from this area to this area. And then when they phoenix a table, of course, everything goes out the window.
Yes.
But, you know, as I move further back, I get less relevant and I increase my odds of serendipitousness.
I'm coming. At the SSP meeting this year, the keynote speaker likened the information field to a bunch of different fenced-off areas, like a field. And he suggested that if you stay in the middle of the field, you really get blinders on. But if you go to the edge of the field, you look over the fence, and you find all kinds of interesting things that your neighbors are doing. I thought that was a good illustration. Kind of goes back to the old model that's been around for years of the hunting, grazing, and browsing.
How are we doing on time, Todd? Okay. Well, I need to give you time to wrap it up. Okay. So maybe I get one more. Oh, this one's a bit of a downer. Well, I've got a good one to leave you with. Let's see how down this is. Librarians have mixed needs with respect to discovery. Use up to justify subscriptions, use down, but users find relevant results. Quality discovery user interface does not always result in more usage. Good discovery service may drive usage away from less relevant content. How do we measure the value of our discovery systems? Is rising usage a good thing or a bad thing? The content we have is irrelevant if it is not findable or discoverable. And then this person put in quotes. Did I solve that user's needs? So I think this is the challenge of measuring the usefulness of our discovery services. We talked a bit briefly, I mean, obviously these questions came from earlier discussion about how, very precise use means that the users are finding exactly what they need and there's not as much demand on all of the underlying content. Or if there's a high demand on the underlying content, it might be that they're just searching around and not finding what they need. How do we answer that question of, did the user find what they need? That's too challenging for 4 o'clock. All right, this is the last one. I think, again, I didn't write down a Twitter handle. Here it goes. Once upon a midnight dreary, I dreamed up the perfect query, but alas, it resolved no more. Quote the raven, nevermore. Todd?
Thank you, Peter.
Did that meet your expectations?
Yes. Nettie will be disappointed she didn't see you in the hat. Oh, on Twitter.
Oh, thank you.
There are pictures. Well, thank you for that, that closing, and also thank you for your leadership on the Discovery to Delivery Topic Committee. From my perspective, when we organize these events, I always think about what will success mean, and from the perspective of the Education Committee, every time we say sell out a room, that's success, which we did. But more importantly, I think about kind of what are the outcomes for the participants. I hope this was a useful educational opportunity for you all. Can I get a show of hands? Think this was a useful educational opportunity for you all? Fantastic, thank you. We're going to do there'll be a survey, follow-up survey, just to get some feedback from you all. It may already be in your inboxes or not, but it will be shortly if it isn't. It is now. So, that's always a metric by which we consider whether or not an event is successful. In the case of this particular event, walking out the door with a number of ideas and opportunities to help the community advance discovery was a key component for why we hosted this meeting. In an era with reduced travel budgets, and we do probably 30 or 40 educational events online that are either webinars or open teleconferences. We need to provide a real reason to bring people together and have an opportunity to exchange ideas and interact with each other. And I think this was a great melding of both educational opportunities, but also valuable one-on-one conversations that don't happen in virtual spaces. And from my perspective, taking away 25 or 30 different project ideas, maybe even more, and actually being able to do something with them will be the true measure of the success of this meeting. 6 months from now, or a year from now, or 5 years from now, have we generated efforts in the community that will actually impact the users and the patrons of libraries and the discovery of the resources that publishers and other providers are creating and distributing? And I think we've taken a huge step in that direction. There'll be a lot of work from the NISO staff perspective, as well as the topic committee's perspective, and even the eventual working groups that will be formed out of this group, out of these ideas. And we kind of look forward to that work, because I think it will have an impact. I think we will be able to, adjust the knobs, so to speak, and push the ball forward, if you kind of mix metaphors. So from that perspective, I think this has been a really productive and useful use of our collective times and our collective energies. I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the fact, as I do at the end of every meeting, that NISO doesn't get anything done if it isn't through the active participation of people like you, who are contributing your time, energy, ideas, solutions to our activities. We are a membership-based organization, and a very active membership-based organization. People are often surprised when I tell them that NISO is only 4 or 5 people. But that's only the central, that's the office staff of NISO. Our community is several hundred, maybe even thousands of people who are touched by our work. And so on behalf of them, I want to thank you all for contributing to that process. It takes a village, so to speak, but it takes a community to really get things done in this regard. We can push the community, but it really needs the community kind of come along with us in improving these. So thank you all for both contributing to that and contributing to the success, both of this meeting, but overall all of our efforts. And so if you're not a member of our organization, consider joining. Because, obviously without members, without participants, without engagement, we don't get anything done, and we have a long list of things to get done, which grows by the day. So with that, I want to thank again the sponsors who've contributed to the success of this event. So EBSCO, ProQuest, Elsevier, Atlas, and Sage. Many thanks to them for their financial support to make this event possible. Thank you to all of our speakers for their contributions to the conversations today. And thank you all for joining us and giving us your ideas and participating in this conversation. And thank you in advance when you say yes, when we ask you to contribute to advancing some of these ideas. Because we will circle back to you. We always do. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope you all have safe travels back to your homes, wherever that may be. And do stay in touch and stay involved and stay engaged. And with that, wish you all a great afternoon. Thank you.